Hi everyone, I'm Kurt. I'm the Director of Newcastle Social Workers, and today I'm going to do a brief video about psychosocial recovery coaching. I've had a few questions lately about the differences between a recovery coach and a support coordinator, so I thought it would be helpful to just explain that quickly. So, the key difference with a psychosocial recovery coach is that they are required to have either lived or learnt experience in mental health, whereas an NDIS support coordinator is not required to have that experience. So for a psychosocial recovery coach, they need to have either a minimum of a Cert 4 in mental health peer work or equivalent training, as and or so they can either have the qualification or they can have the experience or they can have both. So it's a bit vague there. Or a minimum of 2 years experience in mental health related work. And again, I'd just like to point out that that's a bit vague. So mental health related work, you could be being a support worker, which is still very valuable experience. I started as a support worker and it taught me a lot. But the difference between that experience and 2 years of experience working as a support coordinator, working with people with psychosocial disabilities, is vastly different in terms of the quality of support that you're going to get when you're choosing a recovery coach. The similarities with support coordination are that a recovery coach will still be required to complete all of the key tasks that a support coordinator is responsible for. So these are things like assisting with budgeting, connecting with services, assisting to resolve disputes, helping to educate around any changes with the NDIS funding. And a recovery coach will also still complete a support plan, but it will be called a recovery plan, and we'll talk about this a bit more in a second. But the reality is that a good support coordinator with mental health experience will naturally do the vast majority of things that a recovery coach would do. But the key difference is that with a recovery coach, you know that they have had some mental health specific training or experience. So this is a slide about the NDIS Psychosocial Disability Recovery Oriented Framework, which is a bit of a mouthful, but essentially it's the principles that guide recovery coaching. So it's taking a recovery oriented approach. And these principles are things that anyone who's done social work or psychology and even OT, a lot of anyone in allied health essentially will naturally follow these. This is kind of like the ethical foundation for a lot of work in mental health. But just to go through them, the first one is supporting personal recovery. So that's about fostering trusting and reciprocal relationships, valuing lived experience, and that can be either directly, so the person that is going to be a recovery coach could possibly have had a psychosocial disability or have had struggles with mental health themselves and been through the mental health system, or they may have been a carer for someone close to them and been through that journey, supporting a family member who was admitted to hospital multiple times due to mental health or had some experience through a caring role. This is another principle, NDIS and mental health services working together. So this is something that naturally happens, but it is really important that the person that you choose to be your recovery coach, if you have any involvement with the mental health system, that they understand that system and how it works. It's important from a safety point of view, as well as just making sure that you're receiving the appropriate kind of support. Supporting informed decision making is always important. So the recovery coach will educate you and make sure that you've got a variety of options so that you can have an experience of real choice and control in terms of choosing which providers you'd like to work with, and understanding your funding and the options available to you, which is again similar to support coordination. The next principle is being responsive to the episodic and fluctuating nature of psychosocial disability. So support needs for someone with a psychosocial disability can fluctuate. They can go up and down sometimes, and that's ties into a lot of different conversations around stigma around mental health and, well, you don't seem like you have a disability. Why do you get all this support? Well, the reality is that someone on a good day, when you might happen to interact with them, might appear to be highly functional, but if you caught that same person a month later when they're in a downswing, it'd be a very different story. And that's just a general example. And the last point is having a stronger NDIS recovery-oriented and trauma-informed workforce. So by making that requirement that recovery coaches have a minimum of 2 years experience in a mental health related role or a Cert 4, that naturally leads to people that are more highly trained and they're experienced and they have done things like trauma-informed care training, which is really important. And I hope to see that for support coordination as well, a minimum qualification or experience requirement. I think it's very important. So here are a few key questions to ask if you're considering engaging a recovery coach or asking for that funding at plan review time. The first question I would ask would be, how many years of experience do they have working in mental health, and what role did they gain that experience in? So were they a support worker? Were they a family member? Were they a carer? Was it lived experience for themselves? Ask that question and clarify exactly what kind of experience that is, because as I mentioned before, the difference of having 2 years of support work experience where you went out on community access and possibly didn't have that much training or real experience in terms of the mental health system and how everything works, that's going to be a vastly different experience to someone who has been a mental health social worker for 2 years or someone who's been a psychologist for years. It's vastly different. Other questions are, do you feel like they're supporting your rights to choice and control? So are they offering you options? Do you feel like they're trying to be pushy and pushing their own agenda, or are they really opening the floor to you and letting you sort of explain what you are looking for and what you need? So next question, have they ever worked with someone who has the specific psychosocial disability that you have? So that's really important, because if they haven't, it might not be the best time to, let them learn through you. I mean, if you need a psychosocial recovery coach, it's highly likely that you need that tailored mental health support. And although it's nice to let people try new things, I wouldn't recommend that in this situation. And the last point, do they have any lived experience either directly or as a carer, which we covered before? So in summary, choose someone with appropriate qualifications. So they need a minimum of a Cert 4, but they could also have a diploma or a degree level qualification in a relevant field, which is obviously preferable, or might be. I mean, I can't speak for you, but it's just something to consider. If you'd like more information, check out the NDIS pricing arrangements document, as well as the NDIS Psychosocial Disability Recovery Oriented Framework, which again is a mouthful, but a nice document just that covers the principles of a recovery-oriented approach. And then, as always, I'd just like to recommend that choosing an NDIS registered provider will give you more peace of mind with the upcoming changes. So I think there are likely to be lots of changes across the board, and working with a registered provider, it just gives you that security to know that if they put in mandatory registration for recovery coaches, you'll know that you don't have to change, because obviously, as we mentioned before, having those trusting relationships, that takes consistency and time. So yeah, anyway, hope this was helpful.